Hello everyone, we are sorry for being a little bit late. Everything happens at the first online conference. So let me present to you our next speaker, Hanz Uszkoreit, who's joining us from Beijing, right?
Yes, in a way. Right now I'm in Berlin, but I used to live the last 3 years in Beijing.
Perfect. So Hanz will talk about usage of AI for enterprises. So I will just leave the stage to Hanz. Good luck.
Yes, hi everybody, and welcome to this talk. I'm happy that you joined me for this topic, because this topic is very dear to my heart. I have worked in artificial intelligence for more than 35 years in the United States, in Germany and China. And just recently, it became very, very obvious that in a few big areas of artificial intelligence, Europe is not really in a very competitive position. The United States and China are much, much more advanced and better when it comes to consumer AI, when it comes to internet AI, e-commerce, all these areas. And we all know the big companies. Yeah, we all know them, the American companies and the Chinese companies, huge AI companies. But where are the European ones? Fortunately, there is one area in which China is not all that good, and this is enterprise AI. And this has been recognized by Kai-Fu Lee, who wrote a book, compared, for instance, United States and China. And there, Li Kai-Fu, who is a former executive of Google and Microsoft, he started Microsoft Research Asia, he was president of Google China, very smart person. And he said in enterprise or business AI, actually, United States is far ahead of China. But now, if you look at United States is not far ahead of Europe in that area. So actually, business AI or enterprise AI is something where Europe still has quite a chance. And I will talk about one aspect of it, but I will touch other aspects of enterprise intelligence or AI for enterprises during my talk. So in the course of digital transformation, data are becoming a central resource. And data exploitation in big companies starts with company internal data, because that's much easier to do. And this is several places where AI can play a role. If you have enough data on your supply chain, on your production line, on your quality checking, then you can train systems that optimize or that improve. So for instance, in manufacturing, you can have computer vision that helps you to check the quality. If you have a supply chain, then you can check exactly the demand in order to calculate the supply chain, the best balancing of resources for the supply chain, how to use your assets, your machine, how many parts to buy, and so on, if you can demand forecast. And so AI helps quite a bit of that in that. Other areas are predictive maintenance. Yeah, you can calculate when things may break, or you can optimize energy consumption. So lots of things you can do on internal data. But the next step is the inclusion of external data as well. And I will explain in a moment why this is so crucial. And then I will say why this is a field where AI is really needed, even more needed than with internal data. Because with internal data, AI can improve the use of data, but actually the data could also be used by humans, maybe not quite as efficiently or effectively. But when it comes to external data, there are limitations. I will explain. So agile enterprises need to closely watch the world. Why is that the case? Because actually the most important things of any enterprise are not within the buildings or lots, grounds, premises of the enterprise, but they are outside. There are things like the customers, that's where our money comes from, the suppliers. Without the suppliers, we cannot produce, and suppliers are even important for non-manufacturing. Yeah, and we have competitors. If we do not watch the competitors well, and the competitors come up with products that are better or cheaper than ours, then it will ruin our day. It will ruin our business. And we have to also watch our partners, because we have to pick the right partners and be aware of their problems early enough. If a partner goes into bankruptcy, we should know early enough. And even people, all of our people are outside. Our staff leaves the premises in the evening, and prospective employees are outside, former employees, or we need experts, advisors, influencers. And we should also outside check the products. We should see who buys the products, what do people think of the products, and not only of our own products, but also of the products of our competitors. We need to compare. And we need also to check products that enable our products. Yeah? So if I buy something that works in a car, I also need to look at cars. We also need to look at relevant new technologies so that we do not miss the point where we have to adopt relevant technologies in order to stay competitive. And we need to check IPR, patents, and we need to check who carries what competence. And finally, it's regulations. We need to watch the laws, tax laws, certification laws, quality requirements, regulations, court decisions, and so on. Lots of stuff to watch outside the world. So we need to look at about all informations of customers, suppliers, partners, competitors, then prospective employees, former employees, own products, and so on. We need to bring it together with the data from inside. And I will give you some examples. And this is pretty tough, and maybe let me try one explanation why it is not so easy. So why aren't there any big companies in China or US that are very successful already in that field, or very few? The reason is that you need to get access to the internal data. And there are big software companies that work together with clients and have access. Companies like Oracle or like SAP or Salesforce, but those are very few. Normally, for an AI startup, it's extremely difficult to get inside this world of data. But it may be easier to get outside data and then get into inside data. So what I'm going to talk about now is some work that we did for many years as a research at the German Research Center for Artificial Intelligence, where we worked with the company Siemens, large manufacturer, in order to watch their suppliers. And that cooperation with a big company helped us to produce some software. So later in the discussion period, I'll be happy to answer questions about that, because the question is really, how can small companies get into this field? I think many small companies are needed in order to drive enterprise AI, but there is this big hurdle. You somehow need to get an entrance. Okay, let me go on. So external data is full of untapped potential. And actually, it's surprising that most of these data are not secret. By the way, this is even true for the military and political intelligence services like the CIA, Central Intelligence Agency of the United States, actually also for the intelligence services of the United States government, open source intelligence, getting relevant data from open sources, social media, radio, reports, everything that's openly accessible, accounts for up to 95% of all intelligence used in the US government. So, and the same is actually true. It may be even higher for companies because, you know, the CIA can get use illegal, semi-legal ways to get secret information. But companies better don't do that. Yeah, that would be industrial espionage. So most of the stuff needs to be gotten from open data. And the power of data is, of course, increasing exponentially of open data. Yeah, so 90% of the world's data was generated in the last 2 years. It's growing. We can see it in our work. It's growing very fast. So, but there's also a lot of noise in the data. So if you are not selective enough, if you are not able to see which data are really relevant, yeah, in this big stream of external data, media, social media, and so on, yeah, talking about companies, products, and so on, reviews, company or product reviews on e-commerce sites, all that stuff. If you cannot filter out the noise, then you bind too much human labor, and human labor is very expensive, and also humans don't like it to be bothered with lots of useless stuff. And this is where AI comes in. It's not enough to have a search engine that sees where your company is mentioned and then dump the million of signals, of documents onto the people. Nobody has the time to look through. So AI is needed in order to do a first selection, a routing, a filtering, and maybe even some interpretation. And I will talk about this now. So traditional monitoring tools get you a broad coverage, but low relevance. Or you do very narrow coverage and relevance with moderate relevance, limited abilities, but they cannot deliver the breadth and the relevance. So they can either go for very narrow, or they can go for lots of data. But bringing both together, the breadth, the huge volume, and still stay relevant, that you cannot do with traditional methods, let's say with humans and very easy, simple search engines. So, but 74% of managers suffer from information overload, while human analysts spend 36% of their time analyzing and trying to understand data. Yeah, so even the analysts, yeah, are overloaded. So that's why we don't drown the people in data. We deliver actionable intelligence. And when I say we now, who am I talking about? I'm talking, of course, about my own company in Beijing and Berlin, but also I talk for other companies that are in the same field. There's a number of young AI companies now. And our company actually came out of research, and we are continuing research with the German Research Center for Artificial Intelligence, with the company Siemens and many other partners, financed by the German government, but partially we are also selling already products to other big companies. So we are still doing research and we are already selling. So, and we need to bring the stuff where it's needed. So we need to bring the stuff from all over the world. And in the end, if it's a warning about a partner company, a supplier or so, then we need to show it to the person, maybe immediately on a mobile device, maybe on a dashboard. I will give examples for that. And that's the thing, gets filtered, and the real relevant stuff need to pop up actually when it's needed. Yeah, you cannot just store it and show it later. So how does it work? So you start with powerful web crawling, and there you use crawling technology as we know them also from search engines. maybe a little more sophisticated because we already use complex regular expressions for narrowing in, but still there's no semantics, no natural language understanding at that point. And then this is one example, yeah, where we find 280,000 documents in 400 million sources. That was in a proof of concept project for a large German company. So this we can do with a kind of traditional monitoring tools. And the next thing is now where AI already comes in, we need to extract relevant pieces. And we concentrate right now on events and certain types of facts that are of real importance to the companies. Events like product releases, plans, closures, accidents, quality problems, and so on. So right now we have about 60 event types that we are looking for and a couple of other facts. So then we need to, after we have found the events, we need to classify them, which ones are really critical. Because sometimes if 2 people are fired by a company like Google, unless those are very, very important people, it's not very important. But if 2,000 are fired, it's already important news. So we need to classify with respect to the customer needs. And then we need to push it into what we call actionable intelligence. Yeah, intelligence in the sense of what the intelligence services need, but that's needed for the other type of intelligence, namely the intelligence of the decision makers. So that we need to do. Then we push it, and maybe we push it. One of our products is to push it onto an app that we have that runs on iOS and Android. But I show you later also the dashboard view. Yeah, you can also use the system on any type of computer via the web as a web service. So, and we already have many customers and we have lots of experience and a big team. We have a big team. My company is small, but we have teamed up with another company, a partner company, and together we have more than 50 people now, actually more than 60 in Berlin they are, and we have worked together for several years with this other company. It's called Ubermetrics. So let me jump ahead a little bit and get you over the marketing stuff. Yeah, you are not interested in the marketing stuff. You want to know how it works. So the mission is to distill valuable corporate knowledge from this endless universe of unstructured data. And there, our partner company, Ubermetrics, already had a system that was able to search for certain things and do the filtering. So what is not in there in the beginning is the real language understand events and so. But you can already do, in a way, named entity recognition. Yeah, you can already, but we have improved that a lot. So that's also not so easy to recognize, for instance, company names. For instance, yeah, we have worked in China. China is very important for the worldwide economy. And it's very, very difficult to get Chinese names recognized well. But I think I need to speed up a little bit in order to, I will jump over a few things. This is the platform that we have right now. And then I will finish by showing now where the AI in the language understanding comes in. So we start on the left-hand side with many data sources, open news, media, with social media, with company websites, with third-party products. Then we go to targeted global data curation. Yeah, this is done, the data curation helps to get these things by Ubermetrics. And then lots of things happen in text analytics. I cannot talk about all the details. We need to recognize the names, of course, named entity, mainly with deep learning. But then we also do syntactic parsing. That we also do with neural network methods, get a dependency parse. What does it mean? We get a syntactic structure, and we need the syntactic structure to, for instance, to know who does what to whom. If we say Microsoft acquired PowerSet, which one is the acquired company? Of course, it's PowerSet and not Microsoft. But if it's two companies that are much smaller, you may not know. You need to know which is the subject and the object of a sentence. Yeah? Who acquired whom? So we need to do that. We need to do some co-reference resolution. If it says, for instance, the company it bought another company it, yeah, then we need to know which company is meant. And then we need to do some entity linking. What that means is if we have certain companies, Apple, take the name Apple. There's more than one Apple company. And you need to know from the context whether it's the computer company or the record company. And if you have Virgin, there are many companies, as you know, airlines and record companies and so on. So the same with product names and people. You need to do entity linking. That means you found some entity, a company. Now you need to link it to the concept, to the real company. Yeah, you can do that, for instance, link it to a Wikipedia entry or to an entry in your database. And then we build a knowledge graph. I will show you. And the knowledge graph serves as the accumulated knowledge. And we need the knowledge graph in order to interpret new signals. So, for instance, if there is an ongoing problem with the bankruptcy of a company, then we can interpret new news only if we know about that. And then we get a RESTful API, an application program interface, and the dashboard. And then we can bring the whole thing on the right-hand side to the customers, to either to applications or to the people, yeah, to applications or to the mobile app or to the people themselves, to decision makers or to analysts. Okay, I think I need to move up a little bit because we are getting behind. This is the analytics dashboard, yeah, where we get lots of news in. Here we found, for instance, lots of mentions and event types and do some analytics. And here we get examples, yeah, where we find Corona-related news. Yeah. In one of our systems, we looked at news, companies, problems that companies have because of the Corona crisis. And then we find lots of things, lots of Corona news, maybe closures and firing of people and so on. Closure of a site, Volkswagen closed the site and so on. So, and I won't have the time to go through now all the steps again. We then put the thing into a knowledge graph. This is a knowledge graph of the Volkswagen Group and their relationship to small enterprises. And then we find lots of these relations between the Volkswagen Group and small enterprises. So let me finish wrapping up by giving you some take-home messages that I can do without slides now. And then I'm open to, or I'm looking forward to your questions. So one of the reasons why enterprise AI is very tricky is because you can do not so much with narrow AI. Narrow AI meaning to have one special learning method in artificial intelligence, like vision and just training one neural network. And this one neural network is your whole AI system. That you can do maybe for optimizing some forecasts or for doing some quality checking, maybe for things like that, yeah, demand forecasts, some analytics. But for the more important things, especially for decision processes, usually you need different types of input, like unstructured data, structured data, texts, and you need knowledge. You need corporate knowledge, which you cannot really learn all from data. In our case, for instance, we need to recognize news about hundreds of thousands of companies, And it is impossible. Some of these companies are not mentioned often enough in the data to learn all of these things from unstructured texts, from textual data. And the companies are changing and products are changing all the time. Yeah, there are new companies, older companies, different forms of company names and so on. So enterprise intelligence usually means that you have to put several methods like knowledge graphs, named entity recognition, event detection of events, fact detection, several things you need to join and then have some analytics over them. And that's the typical thing about corporate AI applications. And the reason is very simple, because the corporate world, and especially corporate processes and decision-making, are very knowledge-rich. You cannot really do so much with narrow AI. So there is a big opportunity for small AI companies, especially if they are willing to experiment with combinations of methods, and it's urgently needed. But then it's very important to find good partnerships. Either find one large company that works together with you, or do research projects with larger companies, because otherwise, if you do it just outside real data, in a little company without having the access to the real world, it's very, very difficult. Okay, so I wanted to finish with this part. Enterprise intelligence and enterprise AI is an exciting area, and especially lots of space for smaller companies and also for companies in Europe. And it is unlikely that one big company like Google or Baidu can do all of that. They cannot. There are too many types of enterprises, too many tasks, too many languages, too many cultures. So there's lots of space for small and medium AI companies. And I think it's, I would encourage all of you, it's a great field to work in. So I'm looking forward to your questions. Thank you for your attention.
Okay, so now I'm back for the Q&A session. Thank you a lot, Hanz, for great experience into the AI, artificial intelligence for enterprises. This is actually a huge question and very important question, and something we are trying to work a lot on in Georgia, because we understand that if we are not taking our companies to the level of usage of data analytics and a lot of other things that are going on the AI name, they will just not survive, especially currently during the crisis when everything should be digitalized and everything should be remote. So thank you a lot for helping us to understand this question more. The question from us would be, while we are waiting for questions from the attendees, from us, the question is, what's actually the entry point for developers or entrepreneurs, startups, whoever would like to go into this sphere? What's the entry point for them? Because some people say that in order to become let's say AI specialist in general, without going into particular sections, you need to know mathematics, you need to understand a lot of stuff, etc. Or is there anything that can be accessible to basically anyone, but maybe of course on the basic level, but still something that could lead them to bigger exploration and getting more into the technology in the end? What's the entry point actually?
Yeah, okay. Very good question. The answer is there are many AI technologies that are needed, that are urgently needed in enterprises or for building useful applications, for which you or the company does not have to exceed the state of the art. Yeah? So it is enough that you use for certain things. So for instance, if you want to classify documents, if you want to find certain company names and so on, then you can, unless you want to do something very more ambitious, then you can use standard software, standard methods, and train them for your purposes. Yeah? So there are The same thing is true if you want to, in a company, do quality checking or document analytics. If you want to analyze invoices, let's say. So then usually if you use some of the best methods and then do some clever data work here, so you may need some people who are called data scientists, but it's very hard to say what is a data scientist, because it's not really a certified profession, with a certified curriculum. But you need people like this, and it's so if you. But then the problem really is not so much. The problem is not so much only finding the right things in the world of AI technologies, but to find the right problems on the company side and to bring it together. And many AI companies that started to work for enterprises didn't have enough feeling, intuition about what's important in the companies. Mm-hmm. So if you don't, so either you need at least one person who has that feeling, or you need to work together with enterprise people on a certain level. And very often the entry point is that you help some larger companies to do very, very narrow things. But in order of these narrow, so what I mentioned, in the end, you need to move from narrow AI to broader AI, not to general AI, but to broader AI. Mm-hmm. That's true, but maybe not in the very beginning. In the very beginning, some companies solve one particular problem, which gets them the foot into the door and gets them to talk to people in the corporate world and see what their pain points and their problems are. And then together with them, if you have some people who know what the latest results in AI are, they don't have to have them produce themselves. That's not needed, but who know what they are, then you can sit together, because then you know more than the people out there in the client company. Then you can sit together with them, and very often these people, they also have ambitious people who want to try something new in the companies. It's not that you always have to come with a ready, proven shrink-wrap product. But very often you find ambitious people there too, and you can sit together and dream up new things and try them out. The disadvantage, of course, is in the beginning you won't get the huge revenues. You need some financing for that time, because the company is not going to pay you for something experimental. That's not worked out yet. The full big revenues that keeps you floating. So, but since the corporate world is so hard, you cannot just get finances from an investor, build a completely ready-made product, and then go and fulfill a need. It's impossible. Because you never know the company and the corporate world good enough. You always have to do it together. And that's what we did. We worked for about 4 years 3 to 4 years in a research center with Siemens and other companies. And that's what we usually do. We work for a while with these companies, sometimes in projects that are partially government funded, partially industry funded. And then you get closer into that. And then from that moment on, you can go on your own. Sorry for the long answer, but that's
thank you. No, that's a good explanation, actually. Another question is also from us. Our team is kind of curious in that kind of questions. What does it actually take to establish kind of research lab, be it close to some corporate company or be it close to university? I mean, where should we start with? What would you suggest?
Yes, I still think the time is still good for that. Even if it's not the biggest hype anymore. Now companies have become a little more sober about AI, but it's still very popular. AI is still very popular. And if you are not very expensive in the beginning, I think it is possible to work with companies, and do a temporary joint lab or some collaboration with corporations. You may have to take companies from larger countries or being some larger companies. Yeah, it may not every company may have enough cash to or be aware enough of that. Yeah, but there are companies that would enter into such connections, and especially I think many large corporations are interested in the markets of your country. So if you get your politicians behind it, and your politicians sit together and say, "Oh, we have very smart young companies here," and talk to the big companies, and why don't you give them a chance? Couldn't you cook up something temporary? I think some companies are willing. And please do never forget China there, because Chinese companies are very rich, and they are very much interested in getting into Europe and other parts of the world, because they feel more and more closed off from the United States. And so I think the times are very good for getting Chinese companies interested. And they are crazy about AI in China. Yeah, so in AI, even the people in the street, yeah, they know the names of all the famous Chinese AI people. Like in Germany, you know the football stars, yeah, and in China, they know the names of the AI people.
Okay.
Or Japan or other companies, yeah, don't go not only go to US or French or German companies, yeah, go to. Yeah. So that would be, yeah.
Cool. Thank you a lot. Personally, I would love to talk about this topic for a long, long time, but unfortunately, we are already out of the timing, and the time has come to jump to the next session. Thank you a lot, Hanz, for joining us.
It was my pleasure. Thank you very much. And thanks to everybody for listening. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.